Faleminderit gjithë që keni ardhur. Thanks for coming, guys. Eventin e fundit javës të parë të festivalit realisht e kena të lidhën në gusht me written architecture, me arkitekturën e shruar. Edhe e kena ndërmend me prezentu 2 libra, është Eliza, është Gzimi, më pastaj janë 3 libra të përzgjedhura nga IBAI, nga Actor Urban Next, është DPR Barcelona edhe është Miss Foundation. Prezentim nga ngu Eliza në anglisht se I kena edhe këta mysafir të huj këto, kështu që, as a courtesy. So basically I just explained what's gonna happen tonight, so thanking you for being here. The presentation is gonna be in English, because of you.
Thank you.
So without further ado, Eliza, please.
Thank you, Bekim. Mirë rama gjithë, mirë se keni ardhur. Edhe faleminderit që keni ardhur me ndo kohën me neve. Hello everybody, welcome. Yes, I'm Eliza Hoxha. I'm an architect, educated as an architect, but I work more in the field of urban planning and culture in general. I was lucky, so to say, to be commissioned to present Kosovo Pavilion in Venice Biennale this year with the theme Free Space. And this was very, important moment to think about Kosovo, free space as such. What does it mean to Kosovo? Free space as a country, free space in different historical contexts and different periods of time. And being here and living here all my life, besides my travelings for my education abroad, I decided to focus the theme of free space on the 90s in Kosovo, when we were expelled from the public institutional life, and then after the abolition of Kosovo autonomy, and then just by chance or trying to find a way to survive in very abnormal situation of that time, we actually created several free spaces in the private houses. So I'm going to speak a little bit not about Pavilion as such, but about the theme and why we decided to have a book not on the Pavilion itself and the Pavilion as image and as an architectural piece represented in Venice, but the book to highlight different dimensions of 90s from different perspectives, different actors from different fields. So I'm sorry that the book is not printed yet. It will take a few more days, but I'm just going to go at least through the content. I don't know if it's visible for you. Just to have a clue why we want to talk about the 90s and in which way. Actually, our book is constructed in 4 lines, and besides the introductory part, it's Kosovo in the 90s in general, and it comes through the story of different political actors and opinionists during that time, still active in Kosovo today, such as Shkelzen Malici, for example, and then the entrepreneurship dimension of 90s, when Albanian started to kind of create spaces for their survival in economical way. This comes also from the economist, PhD student in Milan. And then, yes, a free space in a international humanitarian car, a movable free space. An architect being an activist during the 90s because they were not able to practice their profession as such. So Kosovo in the 90s, and then what happened out of space? Kosovo is out of space, out of public space, out of public institutional space, and what happened during that period. I will just go through the idea of shifting from public to private, as I mentioned before. So we realized our public functions within a house. Then a house became a container to absorb every public dimension or function, and became a kind of a heterotopic place, changing all the time and kind of embracing different functions during the day. And then, yes, memories of that time, like memories of youngsters of that time, the university as spreading out into periphery, and then the periphery becoming a center for our community, and the house becoming a metaphor or a substitute for the city life. Yes, the other dimension of health in the 90s, Albanians in Kosovo started to create their own oasis of healthcare, being represented by the Muse of Resistance, or Muse of Health, with the name of Mother Teresa. And then yes, one more example, which is the Herta House. It's just one example of many houses in Pristina that became schools. So we did a research on that, and then I'm going to explain a little bit about that just to see what happened. And yeah, what was the society during 90s? What happened? We have some lessons from Kosovo resistance, like the different demonstrations. Public space was mainly used just for the demonstrating and manifesting what was missing for us as Albanians in Kosovo. And then in other aspects of life, it was just a transit route for us, because we did our public life into periphery. And then this resistance comes in two dimensions. First, as general resistance, but also the woman component in these and their activities during the 90s. The parallel education system. The Ganibobi Center was one intellectual hub founded by Soros Foundation during the 90s, and it was a free space where also actors from Belgrade and from Serbia came to Kosovo and vice versa, trying to kind of create a new dialogue in this pre-war and during the war in Kosovo. Other fragments of historical memory, and then yes, walls as something to say. Many graffitis in the street, but people asking for Kosovo to be free, or to give peace a chance, or Ne damo Kosovo, which means from Serbian, we don't give Kosovo, and different stories kind of coming together again in this book. And yes, what was the imaginative space? Like, how did we live during the time? So in this chapter, there are people writing about art as a platform of telling stories, creating new spaces. The moment when academic art was not the only scene in Kosovo, but just by chance, it was another space created, an alternative art, which brought a lot of new waves of artistic communications in Kosovo, and at the same time it was used as a protest, as a platform to tell other stories with other means of who we are and what do we want. And then yes, artistic performances during 90s, such as Where Do You See Freedom, The Muse of Resistance, a story about the Theater Dodona and the Gallery Dodona, which was our hub during the 90s, and things that happened during that time, and the Satellite City. Why the Satellite City? Because, I mean, to escape from very gray and hard reality, and being expelled from the media and information system during that time, every Albanian family bought a satellite to be linked to the world, and also at the same time to learn about what's going on in Kosovo through the radio television of Albania, which gave 2 hours of their program just for Kosovo. So practically we took our informations for ourselves, vice versa, through Albania. And then yes, it was very important also to, satellite was a kind of escape, like a getaway from this reality, but it was very important element also in the cityscape, because it was so visible to read where Albanian families live and where other families, other ethnicities live. So for us, it was very important as an element to use it also in our pavilion, because it was our dish, feeding dish for emotional and cultural part. Because I mean, maybe unconsciously we were shaped, so to say, our taste, music and fashion and whatever, by the satellite, by MTV and Viva and all that stuff. But also we told our stories to the world through BBC and CNN and Associated Press, who were present in Kosovo during that time. So satellite was a very important element during the 90s. And then yes, like the idea of heterotopia is everywhere, a reflection in the mirror. Why did we use the mirror? a mirror, as an idea to confront ourselves after so many years and to see why the 90s are so important, but also to express that psychological and optical maybe freedom that we had in these very small spaces of houses becoming public space and free space for us. Escaping isolation, there is just a small story of youngsters from Kosovo, how important is free space today. We are free as a country, but still very closed. They don't have possibilities to move, even to come to Venice. And yeah, a preview of opening. It was very important, since the book was not ready for the opening day, to complete it with some images of the pavilion. So this is more or less what's in the book, and why we chose to make it a story for Kosovo and not the pavilion as such, and to open up a debate so many actors of different fields could start thinking about that and documenting that, because in Kosovo we lack documentation of different periods of time, especially in urban development and history of our cities. So it was an important moment to think of and to work on that. I will just go through one of the albums, because along the book, after every chapter, there is a smaller book within, which is a photo album with a one story linked to that. And I will just go maybe through the Herta House, just to see the house, one of the houses that was a school house during that time. Just let me find it. Preview. Oh yeah, I think it's this one. Bekim, kuj e Bekim? Qysh e rritë këtë sen? Kush Bekimi? Dikush me Mek që për nësë nësë përnoj Mek. Okay, because I don't use Mac. Veç e to, rrite, veç me rritë. All right. So what we did, we wanted to interview one of the owners of the houses that gave his house for free for 10 years, and his house became a school. And this is a Herta House, and there is a story of the owner, why he gave the house, and then some very important moment that he built his house for himself, and he never managed to live in this house because he gave it for the school, and then his daughter was going in the school in her own house. And they kept the house, and other facilities, and they paid about everything. So it's his story, and then how did it function, how it was organized, and then I was lucky also to meet after many years the director of the school, which was my professor of history. So these are this is a house, and this here, the other one is the director and of the school of that time, and then the owner of the house. And then yes, we searched the house, the classrooms, and the square meters, how important they are in the school space, and then to compare it with the normatives of schools that as they have to be. And the school was bombed during the year of 1999 after the NATO bombing started, but it was bombed by Serbian forces, and the owner kept it like that because he just decided that he never wanted to live in that house. He wanted to keep it as a museum of a schoolhouse. And he took many promises every year that the elections were here. But it never happened that someone from the government in Pristina or in the central level to work on that and do something about that. So the house practically is still in the condition as it was founded after the war. What he did, this is the house. What he did, he just constructed this, the roof, because the house started to fall down from the atmospheric conditions. So it's just like that. And then, yes, there are other houses. This was my faculty, the house of the Faculty of Civil Engineering and Architecture in the Arberia neighborhood. And this is a house still standing there. My old studies were finished in this house, so I'm very linked to that neighborhood and to this house. And just to have some views of, this is like our whole a big hall for different activities and our classes. But what is important to see is that the courses and the work that was done in these schoolhouses, it was really serious and exactly what we do still today, you know, a lot of responsibility and dedication. Yeah, so these are some of the houses, and also this view of orange bricks or blocks. It's not just by chance that we used it in our pavilion on the outside space, not as an element that is really telling a story about Kosovo architecture, but more as a metaphorical thing that the house as a public institution started to change itself, because there was no space enough for hosting all these public institutions. So it was always on the making and never finished outside. And yeah, so just an overview of what we did. And this is me and my generation. And these are the professors still working in our faculty, Florina, Dervish, and Vujari. Yeah, so more or less, the book will bring different stories from the 90s and the free space that was created to survive the occupation. Thank you very much. Do I need to?